Here we are, dear friends. We are concluding Jewpernatural. Today's class and this course is dedicated in loving memory of Mrs. Bernice Trogan by the Levin Klein family. And lesson 4, titled Para and Normal. Okay, today's topic is going to be about all alternative life forms. That is the paranormal, supernatural topic for today. So there are 3 big topics we're going to be exploring in tonight's class, and may God help me to get through it all on time. This is tonight's 3 topics: angels and demons, spirits and ghosts, and extraterrestrials. These are the 3 things. So it'll be like 3 sections to today's class, and we'll be there's a lot to plow through for tonight. So here's a story. There was a synagogue down south that was looking for a rabbi, and they heard that there's a rabbi in a different state, and he's leaving his congregation. So they wrote a letter to this other synagogue saying, "Can you please give us a report, a resume about this rabbi that's leaving you?" So they wrote back a letter. They said, "Listen, we're going to capture who he is very succinctly. He's like King David, he's like Moses, and he's like an angel." So the synagogue receives this letter. They say, they're singing his praises. So they very quickly sign a contract with this rabbi. They employ him, but it doesn't take too long, and they realize that this guy, he's a rotten lemon. They got themselves stuck with the wrong guy. He doesn't know how to speak. He's not eloquent. He's not nice. He's not well-mannered. Just the whole thing. So the board of the synagogue was very upset. This other synagogue is gonna try to fool us like that, deceive us into hiring this guy. Why would they write such a letter? So they wrote a scathing letter to the other synagogue saying, "How dare you deceive us like that? How could you write to us all these great praises, and look what you sent us here?" So the other synagogue sent back a letter saying, "No, our letter to you was very accurate. Just like King David, he doesn't know English. Just like Moses, he cannot speak. And just like an angel, he's not a mensch." Okay. So we'll be talking about angels tonight. Let's start learning about angels. And it's actually a very interesting topic, because when people think about paranormal activity and paranormal ideas, I think this class is probably at the essence of it, right? Well, what's usually the paranormal activities that people, either UFOs, is there alternative life forms? Are there civilizations? Right now, is there another form of humanity or something out there? The idea of ghosts and spirits, communicating with the dead, and the whole idea of other forces within our world. Angels, demons. So, dear friends, let us start our exploration. We'll begin today with the topic of angels and demons. This is where we're going to begin. Today's topic, angels and demons. Okay. So let us make our way through this slowly. When we think of angels, everybody knows how angels looks, right? How do angels look? They for sure have wings. They for sure have wings. What else do they probably have? Like a halo. The halo in general, they got a white shine. There's like a white aura coming off their bodies, and they got white robe, right? Okay, something like that. What do demons look like? They have horns. They're red complexion. Okay, so the first thing we got to do is we have to realize sometimes, and this happens with many topics, where Judaism, we could study what Judaism has to say about it, but sometimes because of either pop culture or the media or movies, the entertainment industry, or maybe even just Western civilization, maybe even from other religions, we have certain conceptions of these ideas. And it's always a very important thing to try to divorce ourselves from those notions, from those perceptions, which are maybe very not Jewish. So let's begin with the idea, what do angels look like? What do angels look like? Do they actually look like that? Are they a bunch of winged creatures flying around? They're all white. So let us begin with our first text from the great Maimonides. And he'll tell us a little bit about what angels are. So let us begin our journey. Max, why don't you begin? Text 1, page 1, page 115.
God created in his world beings that are spiritual and have no material substance. These are the angels, which have no body or physical figure. They are spiritual entities. What are we to make of the prophet's description that they saw an angel of fire or with wings? These are all prophetic visions, and they serve as parables. We find such figurative illustration in the verse, God is a consuming fire. God is not fire, and the description of him in this manner is metaphoric. Similarly, the verse states, he makes his angels like winds, using winds as a metaphor. Since they possess no body, in what manner are each of the angels distinct from each other? They are distinct in the sense that no two angels have an identical spiritual composition. They are on a chain-like continuum, one higher than the other, each sustaining that which is lower than it. They all exist by God's power and benevolence.
Okay, so there we have the first thing. What do angels look like? Number one, they have no physical form. Anna, I have a book for you here. Here, use this here. Let's pass it down to her.
I'm just lazy.
No, oh, you have it with you?
No, I don't have.
No, okay, so there you go. You got it. No problem, no problem. Okay, so number one, angels have no form, so they don't look like anything. That's number one. Because what's a thing? A thing is something that you could measure, you could weigh, has dimensions, right? Anything that you could study in a lab, you could measure with tools of measurement. That's a thing, a physical thing. Angels have none of that. They are fully spiritual forces. And what separates them are their spiritual compositions. Okay. So that's number one. Angels don't look like anything. Let's put that up over here. What are angels? Number one, they have no physical form. Okay. And anything that you will read about angels, which is true in the Torah and in the prophets, do have some of these descriptions: an angel of fire, of wind, with wings. These are all metaphors, very similar to when we describe metaphorically, we apply to God. The word is anthropomorphic qualities, human qualities. We apply them to God simply as metaphors. Okay. So they're angels. What do angels do? What do you think? What is the function of angels in creation? They could give messages to people. Where do you get that from?
That's what angels do, I guess. I don't know where I heard it.
It's kind of true. In the Torah, well, I guess we could have started with the question, does Judaism believe in angels?
Yes.
So even before we read text 1, I think it's a very clear. So where do we have, by the way, so let me ask you, where do we have angels in the Torah? Where do we see the angels in Judaism, in Jewish practice?
In Judaism, it's like Jacob seeing the angels
Oh,
falling down the ladder.
That's right. Jacob dreamt, although it was a dream. So maybe, okay, but a very good point. Jacob dreamt and he saw angels descending and ascending. What else? Where else do we have angels? Abraham, one of the most famous examples of angels in the Torah. Abraham gets visited by 3 men who are really angels in disguise. And each of them have 3 different missions and jobs to do. One tells Sarah that she's going to conceive a child. One comes to give the news of the destruction of Sodom, and one is there to save Lot and his family. Okay. And where do we see angels in Jewish tradition? In the Jewish lifestyle? No, he's a prophet. Well, We can talk about him soon, but Elijah the prophet does make a lot of appearances. Yeah. Where do we have angels? Anyone? You'll all know it when I tell it to you. What's the first thing that we do at our Friday night Shabbos dinner?
Oh, say
No, before Kiddush, Shalom Aleichem.
Oh.
We sing Shalom Aleichem. We welcome the angels. We welcome angels to our Shabbos home. That's the first step of the Shabbos dinner. So, okay, so angels are definitely around. What are the function of angels? The function of angels is in the very name. How do we refer to angels in Hebrew? Do you know the Hebrew word? Malach. Yeah, malach. That's, or in the plural, it's malachim. Malach or malachim. The word malach in Hebrew means an angel. It also could be a word that is used for a messenger, an emissary. If I send you to go travel to this city to deliver a letter to this guy, you are my malach. So an angel means messenger. So the Hebrew word actually gives us the very definition of what angels are. Angels, their very identity is that they are messengers. They are the foot soldiers within God's chain of command, within God's system of creation. And the way it works is with angels is that everything that happens within our world, within the world at large, as well as within our life, any changes, any effects that happen, that those blessings, or God forbid, the negative things that happen, all of that is coming through these angels. They're the ones which are given the task to do these things. So in the Haggadah, there's a very interesting passage where God says, I took you out of Egypt. Ani velo malach. It was I and not an angel. Ani velo saraf, and me and not a this. Me, it was I alone who took you out of Egypt, which is like a big deal. Usually when things happen in nature, it is God, but through a spiritual mechanism, which means God created a system in place. God created a system to reality. And a big part of that system is angels. They are the little henchmen who are running around and moving everything forward within God's system. So what are angels? Angels are simply the ones that help move God's system forward. Sometimes God himself will come and do something, which is a rarity for God to come and take a people out of Egypt. He could have sent angels to do it, and they would have done a fine job. But it was a unique thing. So this is the very identity of angels. So for example, here we start seeing it. There's different types of angels. Do you know any types of angels? By any chance? What are the names of some angels?
names like specific.
Yeah.
Like Gabriel.
Gabriel, Malach Gavriel. What else is there?
Michael.
Malach Michael. So these are not one angel. These are massive teams of angels, armies of angels. Malach Michael, the angel Michael or Michael, is the one that brings healing. So whenever you're feeling sick and you get better, there's an angel who's bringing you that divine energy, that divine blessing of healing. There's something called the Malach HaMavet, the angel of death. And that is obviously the angel that is sent to, when it's time for a soul to disengage from a body, that soul is sent. So every single soul has a mission, has a purpose, and that is what angels are all about. God created an entire universe. Part of how God created the universe is that there's very big systems in place. And that is a very big part of what Kabbalah teaches us, the divine systems, the divine worlds, the divine chain of command. I'll put in a plug now. The upcoming fall course, starting right after the high holidays in Sukkot, is a course titled The World of Kabbalah, the official 6-week primer on Kabbalah. So we've always dabbled in Kabbalah here and there in all of our classes, but this is going to be the official course. We're going to be tackling the 6 major issues of Kabbalah, the 4 worlds, the 10 Sefirot, the world of Tohu, God's essence, everything about the divine chain of command, which is what Kabbalah teaches us. And there's also why is it important for us to learn about it? It's not just a curiosity. These are very important teachings to develop our understanding of God, to develop our awareness of spiritual reality. So that's going to be the fall course. So angels play a very big part in all of that. And just one more thing before we move on. The Midrash sages teach us, not a blade of grass grows until its angel taps it and tells it grow. You hear that? So how many angels are there just for grass? And just for every single weed out there and every plant? Every single blade of grass has its own angel, which is assigned to it and says, grow. So you already realize what's going on over here. The Talmud tells us that the amount of angels that God has under his command is myriads and myriads, countless angels. And every single one of them have a specific function, a job. They are emissaries that God gives them a job to do within his universe. Okay, but let's bring it down to us. So we know what angels are, or more like we know what they aren't. They're spiritual forces. They have no body. We know that they are emissaries. They're messengers. They're not autonomous beings. These are not forces to reckon with. They're simply the little pieces, the little cogs in God's machine that are moving things forward. And everything that happens spiritually, physically in our universe is all through the mechanism of angels making that happen. The question, of course, is in our practical lives, what role do angels play in our lives? And I'll give you 3 examples where we see a pretty primary role of angels within our lives as Jews. So I'll do 3 examples, and it'll give us a pretty interesting idea over here. So let me put that up over here before. What are angels? Malachim. They are messengers. They are emissaries. The name is and for the rest of today's class, I think we should use a Jewish term. Instead of me calling them angels, I'll refer to them as malach, or in the plural, malachim. So what do they do? So number one, let's go with our first point over here. The angels play a very important role in our prayers. Let's read that in text 2. So Elki, why don't you give us a read? Text 2, page 117.
Okay. The word for angel, malach, means emissary. The malachim serve as emissaries that transmit God's creative energy to sustain the worlds and all that they contain. Emissaries speak nothing of their own. They merely convey the message their principle has given them. Similarly, the malachim are merely conduits to transmit the flow from its source to the recipients. There are also malachim who serve as emissaries on behalf of the Jewish, collecting their good deeds and spiritual inspiration and bringing them before God. Regarding the angels that receive the prayers, the Zohar teaches that they are needed because it is impossible for physical sound and word to ascend to heaven and become subsumed in the divine source without them first being refined by the angels. The malachim aren't independent beings. They are merely tools of the divine life that is within them.
All right. Very interesting over here. What we hear over here is that when we do a mitzvah, specifically when we pray, we need the angels to take our prayers and give our prayers lift to bring them up to heaven. And then when those prayers get answered, the same thing has to happen. Those blessings, that they need to come down to us. They need to come from a place above in a spiritual reality, and they need to be converted down into physical form, into physical blessings, to give us the physical needs that we need. So angels are the ones that are constantly crisscrossing this highway between our physical world and the spiritual worlds, bringing our prayers up to God, God's blessings down to us. So it's interesting. When we pray, on the one hand, we're praying directly to God, because that's the recipient of this package. But at the same time, there is a certain indirect line. It's nuanced. It's under the hood. It's not out in the open, but there is a need for the angels to give our prayers lift. And if not for the role of the angels, our prayers wouldn't be able to go up to God, and God's blessings to us wouldn't be able to reach us. There's like a pipeline. Very interesting concept. So let me put this up over here. So number one, what are the angels' functions? Number one, they carry divine blessings from above down to this world. Number two, they convey all of our human thoughts, feelings, and prayers and mitzvot up to God. How does this make you feel that when you pray, you need the angels to bring your prayers to God?
It's a new idea.
It's a brand new idea, right? It sounds a little bit weird. All of a sudden, we always, in Judaism, always teach, we speak directly to God. God is listening to your prayers. And all of a sudden we hear, no. You're speaking to God, but angels need to bring it. So some people are bothered by this idea, right? Like, you're telling me that we don't have direct contact with God anymore. God needs angels to give us blessings. We need angels to pray to God. So here's a little bit of an example of the idea. I want to share with you two ideas. Number one, think about it this way. What happens when I take my phone and I send you a text? Am I writing to you? Yeah. I have your contact on my phone. I write a text, I press send. There's always a little bit of a lag, but 3 seconds later, you get the message. But we all know that it's not that simple. What happens? This is what happens. I just looked it up. What actually happens? The way it works is that your phone has to first take what you wrote, your input, and convert it into a code out of a bunch of zeros and ones. So your simple message that you wrote on text message then actually turns into a whole bunch of code. Your phone has a little antenna. Your phone's antenna is not that powerful. So it sends that code to your local cell tower, which is actually why cell phones are called cell phones, because each tower covers its cell. So every area of tower is a different cell. So our phone communicates with the cell that it's closest to. That cell's a much stronger antenna, and it either is able to contact directly a different cell, or it has to go up to a satellite, then come back down to the cell of the recipient. And then from there, the code is sent to the antenna on your phone. Your phone then converts that code into actual text, and then you see on your phone the notification, Levi Dubov sent you a text message. So both are true at the same time. On the one hand, I'm writing to you directly. On the other hand, yes, there's this entire process of how I get my message from here to there, from my phone to your phone. So just because we're hearing over here that there's angels in between my prayer and God, yeah, it's true, but you kind of have to put it into context. It's a very minute detail. It's like for the techies to know, It's like, yeah, if you want to understand how it happens, how we communicate with God, there's a conversion process. Our physical prayers, which is coming out of a physical body, have to be converted into the spiritual energy. The angels do that. They carry it. The prayers blessings have to come down the exact same way. So it's like not a big deal. Like, for example, something happens. When you drive a car, today, when you hit your gas pedal or your brakes, your gas pedal is not directly doing anything. Your gas pedal doesn't make the engine go. Your gas pedal is wired to a computer. And the computer is busy doing everything. So we're simply sending signals to our computer of what we want, how we want the car to drive. There's virtually nothing that we do in a car which is a direct cause and effect, that we are stopping the car, we're driving the car. Everything is happening through this intermediary mechanism. And same things with our prayers. This is the role of angels. If we didn't have angels, our prayers would be a dud. They just wouldn't, it's like a phone without service. Try sending a message, what happens? All right, garnished, nothing happens. Okay. So that's one point, yes?
I have a question.
Absolutely.
In the sense of creation, so where does angels come in as far as creation is concerned? Were they created before? I mean, where were they?
What day were they created?
Yes.
That's a very good question. Are they part of the 6-day creation process? Do they precede it? Do they come later? I don't know for sure. I'm going to give a guess that it was during. During. It was during the 6th day of creation. Spiritual reality was being created synonymously with physical reality. It was all part of the creation process. But when we get to demons, we're actually going to talk about this specifically, your questions. That's interesting that you bring it up. Okay. But then there's another point. Usually a Jew needs angels in order to communicate with God. But, there's a big but. When you daven with a minyan, when you daven in the presence of a minyan of 10 Jews, then we don't need angels. The power of 10 Jews is enough that then we actually have direct contact with God. That's the power of a minyan. We could bypass the whole system just by davening with a minyan. That's a very powerful idea. There's a much stronger connection and intimacy and closeness between a Jew and God that the angels don't have to be present. The same thing is true, just by the way, during the 10 days of repentance, starting from Rosh Hashanah through Yom Kippur. Those 10 days are very holy. The connection between the Jewish soul and God is closer than ever. And the angels go on vacation those 10 days. If you wanted to know, that's when they go to the Caribbean. They're busy a whole year with our prayers, our blessings and stuff. But then all the angels that take care of us year round, they're off the hook then. But then the most important point is that this is only necessary when we don't have a holy temple in Jerusalem. The holy temple in Jerusalem was the port that connected heaven and earth. Was where God's divine presence was actually manifest and present on earth. And for that reason, there was a direct connection between our physical universe and the Jewish people in this universe and God. The need for angels is really, it's a handicap. We lost our holy temple. There is a compromise in the depth of our conscious relationship with God. So now when we pray, we need a lot more assistance. So really, the angels are only here in a time of exile, in a time when we don't have a holy temple. And ideally, we should be bothered by this. We should be bothered that we need angels in our prayers. And when Mashiach comes and we'll be able to rebuild a third holy temple in Jerusalem, we will not need angels any longer for our prayers. So let's read that in text 3. Anna, you want to read?
What kind of page?
Text 3, page 118.
Bypassing the angels, right?
Yes.
Okay. In the Masonic era, the
Rectification.
rectification of our material, animalistic soul will be complete, and we will no longer need assistance in transmission from the Malachim.
There you have it. So, on the one hand, this mechanism is not a big deal. We're still talking directly to God. Because you have to realize, and this was how the previous text 2 concluded, that the Malachim are not independent beings. They're simply a tool. So can you imagine if somebody comes and does construction for you, you thank the builder, and then you go and thank the tractor. You're such a good tractor. This hammer is a great hammer. This hammer built my house. What are you saying? It's just a tool. A waiter is an independent being with choice, with volition, with its own feelings. So you make sure to thank a waiter, you tip the waiter. But when there's something which is just a tool, without any free choice, without any of its own volition, with no real independence, it loses it's not really anything to reckon with. So the same thing with angels. We can't get too bothered by this whole process. This is the mechanism in place, and the angels are not their own things, which is why in Judaism we never pray to angels. You don't pray to angels, just like you don't talk to a tractor. You give a tip to the tractor. You understand? So the angels are really not a big deal, but at the same time, whenever there's a deeper connection, a closeness between a Jew and God, there's no need for the mechanism of angels in our prayers and our blessings as well. Okay, that is one very interesting function of angels in our spiritual lives. But then there's another one. I want to give you two more examples. Two more very strong examples of where we see angels in our life. The second one is, which I mentioned earlier, on Shabbos. Friday night, we welcome angels. That's how we welcome the Shabbos. Judaism teaches that, we're going to talk about this more soon, Judaism does believe in its own version of what we call guardian angels. There are angels that surround a person. There are angels that accompany a person. The way it works is there's a changing of the guards on Friday night. Our mundane weekday angels leave, and special Shabbos angels come and accompany us just for the Shabbos. So let's read that in text 5. Unbelievable text. From the Zohar, from the Kabbalah. Would you like to read?
Sure.
All right, wonderful.
When we return from the synagogue, angels accompany us on each side, while the divine presence hovers above us and the angels. If we enter our homes with joy and receive guests with joy, and if upon arrival the angels and the divine presence see the candles lit, the table set, and the husband and wife both joyous, at that moment the divine presence says, "This is mine, Israel, in which I take pride."
Such a beautiful text over here. It's really special. Every Friday night, 2 angels escort you home. The divine presence is above you, and they want to see what this house looks like. And if the home, what's the criteria? The home is filled with joy. There are guests. Candles lit, table set. Husband and wife are happy. There's a beauty in the home. It's radiant. Then what does God say? Oh, nachas. This is my people. This is a Jewish home. And that's what we do. We welcome the angels. And that's why the first thing that we do, we come home from synagogue Friday night. Right away, we gather around the table and we welcome the angels. Shalom Aleichem. Right? Shalom Aleichem. So let's read that. Linda, you can read that as well. Let's read text 6, which is the first paragraph of the Shalom Aleichem, page 121.
Peace unto you, ministering angels, messengers of the Most High, of the Supreme King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He.
We welcome the angels. Shalom Aleichem. If you think about it, there are 4 stanzas, there are 4 paragraphs in the Shalom Aleichem. We first say Shalom Aleichem, which is peace unto you. Then we say Bo'achem l'shalom, like come on in, welcome in peace. Then we say Barchuni l'shalom, we ask the angels to bless us in peace. And then we finally say Tseichem l'shalom, may you go in peace. Now how long does it take to sing Shalom Aleichem? 3 minutes, 4 minutes? The angels just came, and you're right away kicking them out? Come on in and a goodbye. What's going on?
They gotta get back to the grass.
No, those are different angels. Those are different angels.
Well, they don't eat, so they figured they could leave.
Like the joke goes that once a mother-in-law made a surprise visit to her daughter and son-in-law's home. The son-in-law answers the door, and she says, "I came for a surprise visit, but I won't be long." She says, "What? You won't even stay for a glass of water?" All right. So what is happening in the Shalom Aleichem? We're welcoming in the angels, and right away kicking them out. And the answer is, it's 2 different pairs of angels. We're welcoming the Shabbos angels, and we're sending off the weekday angels. It's the change of the guards right there. Which is right, welcome and goodbye. And that's the idea, that we have special angels for Shabbos that usher in the peace, the holiness of the Shabbos atmosphere. And the same way Shabbos is meant to be different, we're supposed to get dressed differently on Shabbos, the angels that we have are different. I just want to make a mention, a little bit of a digression, but I just want to point out here the beauty of text 5. What is the criteria of a Shabbos home? It's actually not that much. Enter the homes with joy, have guests, candles lit, table set, and the husband and wife both joyous. Everybody dressed to the nines, everyone looking good, everyone happy, everyone in good moods. And this is what God is waiting to see in a Jewish home. This is not. So I want to make a mention of something. Sometimes we think of keeping Shabbos as like, oh, this is very daunting. To keep Shabbos? If you don't keep Shabbos, then I don't keep Shabbos. You want me to keep Shabbos? It's a whole book of rules. It's a whole lifestyle change. Keeping Shabbos is not easy. But nothing in Judaism is all or nothing. Do everything or do nothing. Let's just look at this criteria. What's God looking for? Forget about all the things that we don't do. Let's not get distracted by that. But it should be a joyous atmosphere on Friday evenings. Set the table, light the candles, have a nice dinner together. Do something that brings joy to the family. That's easy. That's not keeping 6,000 laws. This is a beautiful thing. Who doesn't like a nice dinner and the candlelight? Make it a little bit romantic, make it nice. So there's value in this idea. I heard once a story that there was a family that visited the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and the Rebbe was speaking to them about growing in their Yiddishkeit, growing in Judaism. And they asked the Rebbe for an idea, like, we're a secular family. What could be our next step in growth in Yiddishkeit? So the Rebbe said maybe Shabbos is a good step. They're like, Shabbos? What? You want us to shut down for 25 hours? We can't do Shabbos. There's no way we're doing Shabbos. The Rebbe said, no. I don't mean, do the whole thing at once. The Rebbe said, start with putting a tablecloth on your dining room table for Friday evening. Start with that. That's keeping Shabbos. Yeah, of course there's a lot more things you could do, but don't let the things that you're not doing ruin the things that you are doing right. Tablecloth on the table. That's a table set. Light Shabbos candles. The worst thing is when we stop our growth. We stifle our growth by beating ourselves up about the things that we don't do. Why should I do this? I don't do that. It's a wasted life if you have that attitude. So I love this idea that the Zohar is saying simply what sets the tone and what God's looking for in a Jewish home. Let's start with this. Friday night should be beautiful. Table set. Make sure that we're happy. Light candles. That's it. Beautiful. It's such an easy and attainable and within reach step of creating the atmosphere of Shabbos, and God blesses us. The angels bless us. Okay, so there we have that. And the third example of where we have the presence of angels in our lives is in text 7. Let's do text 7. Al, give us a read. Text 7, page 121.
A person who does one mitzvah is given one angel. One who does two mitzvot is given two angels. One who does all the mitzvot is given many angels. As it says, he will assign his angels to you. Who are these angels? They are the ones who guard the person against harmful demonic forces.
There we have it. Every good thing that we do generates an angel of goodness, of holiness, that then accompanies us, that is our guardian. And then the more mitzvahs we do, the more goodness we do, the more we are surrounded by the spiritual forces which we call holy angels. And God forbid, when we do negative things, inappropriate things, sins, I hate using that word, but sins, that generates a negative angel. Sometimes you see it about people. Sometimes you meet somebody and you just feel a very good, positive energy around them. You know what I'm talking about? Some people, you meet them and they didn't say anything wrong, they didn't do anything wrong. They're just like a little bit toxic. You sense the negativity around them. They give off those vibes. So it's an interesting idea. Judaism says the more mitzvahs you do, literally the more holiness, the more power of good angels that surround you. And then those people are the people that when you go in their presence, you feel it. You could sense this. There's a force of goodness here. There's a force of positivity here. There's angels surrounding this person. So here we have the idea, this is the third thing, that we are all surrounded by angels who are protecting us, taking care of us. And it's a very interesting idea. This is not a very big focus in Judaism of the presence of angels in our lives. But what we do see here is that, under the surface, it's quite there. Under the hood of our lives, the angels are playing a very strong, play a very strong role. So these are the next ideas. Angels accompany us on Shabbos, and what we just learned, the mitzvahs that we do generate guardian angels that protect us from harm. And this is about angels, but the very last words of text 7 is going to segue us into our next point for tonight, that these angels guard us against harmful demonic forces. Wow, that's heavy words. Demonic forces. So again, this is where we have popular culture. Demon sounds scary and freaky. Paranormal forces that threaten your sanity, your normalcy. Does Judaism believe in demons? So demons is a tough word. Let's tone it down. You know what demons mean? Demons are angels, just the opposite of the good angels. Some angels are the angels that are sent to do good things, like healing, like blessings, like growth. Some angels are angels of destruction, or angels that represent negativity. Why? Because God, the way God created the world, that's a world of balance. There's good and there's evil. There's holiness and there's impurity. It's a very balanced world. It's the same way that there are forces of goodness and positivity and holiness in this world. There's also opposing forces. And there are angels who do those functions. So they're really just part of the angels. Just some angels represent positive things. Other angels represent other things. The way the Torah describes the Ten Commandments is that God sent Malachi Chavala, the angels of destruction, upon Egypt. They're angels of destruction. That's their job. It says that when there is, the Talmud speaks about the idea that when there's a plague that's killing people and making people sick, negative angels brought that upon the civilization. It's all being brought through angels. So of course, the scientists are going to find their way to explain it by something, right? A bird in Wuhan. Okay, without getting to the politics of that, if that's real or not, right? But from a spiritual perspective, there's an angel that generated that thing to happen. So it's really just the other side of the coin of these things. So for example, what do we have in Judaism? There's something called, I mentioned to you earlier, the Malach HaMavet, the angel of death. Is he a good angel or a bad angel? Some will say that it's not a bad angel. Death, I'm saying it's very sad when it happens, but it's not necessarily an evil thing. It's natural, it's healthy, it's just part of the cycles of life, as difficult as it is. So there's an angel of death. There's our Yetzer Hara, our evil inclination. Kabbalah speaks about our evil inclination as a demon. Yeah, it's an internal demon. It's a force which represents the opposite of goodness and holiness and positivity, and it's a force within you. So it sounds very scary when you hear the word demon, but all it means is any force in nature, any spiritual force in nature, which is doing something or causing something or representing negativity, that's a demon. And also we believe in the Satan, and there's heavenly prosecutors in the heavenly court. Part of how God created the world is that there's a system of divine justice, and there's prosecutors, and there's defenders. And there are a whole team of angels who are prosecutors against the Jewish people, against specific Jews. When a soul goes up to heaven, there's judgment day, and there are angels that their whole job is just to represent divine justice and to represent anything that needs divine scrutiny. So this is the idea. Negative angels out there. Let's read text 8. Al, do you want to read text 8 as well? It's a short text. So read text 8 for us. Page 124.
10 things were created during the twilight of Friday, the final day of creation. Some say the destructive demonic forces were also created at this time.
Very interesting. So at the very last moments of the 6 days of creation, God crammed in 10 last things. This is from the Mishnah. It's one of the earliest sources in Judaism for the idea of negative angels, of demons. What are one of them, according to some opinions, is destructive demonic forces. So it's funny you ask when the angels were created. I don't know about the good angels, but the negative angels were created here at the last minute. I wonder, I don't know why, but in pop culture, all these concepts of paranormal activity and ghosts and haunted houses are all connected with Twilight, right? I wonder where they got it from. Because this is the source of it. The Mishnah tells us they were created in the Twilight Zone. So where did Disney get it from? I really wonder. Where did the secular affiliation come from? I'll put you on that, Max. But not now. You don't have to Wikipedia it now. Okay, but it's an interesting thing that in Judaism, the negative angels, this is when they were created in the very twilight of the very first Shabbos. As the first Shabbos was coming in, God created these last things. Let's read one more text about demons, and we're going to move right along. So, Susan, do you want to read text 9, page 125?
Demons are called shadim because they reside in desolate areas, shadud, like the deserts. They are primarily found in the extremities, such as in the northernmost part of the world that is desolate because of the cold. Demons are formed from a combination of the elements of fire and air, and their form can't be sensed or grasped by any of our senses. The angel's form is intangible, and because they are so light, they can fly with the fire and the wind.
Nice, that's interesting. Very interesting description over here. So number one, let's just unpack this quickly. Number one, demons are semi-physical, semi-spiritual beings. So the human eye can't perceive them, but they do have somewhat of a force within our world. They even inhabit our world. Right? They cannot be sensed. And demons favor abandoned and desolate terrain. So it's very interesting. Angels, good angels, live amongst us. Where are the negative angels? They don't live amongst us. They are in they are no man's land. So they go to the extremities, the North Pole, the deserts. It says that they're there. Okay, the idea is over here that we have positive angels, negative angels, but here's the key idea. Text 11 is the most important idea as we wrap up our discussion about angels and demons. Text 11, and read also, Susan. Page 127, again from Nachmanides.
Demons have no power or strength. There is no need to engage with them because they do not have independent ability to benefit or harm us.
This is the most important idea. And this is one of the places where you see that the Jewish understanding of angels and demons totally differ from what other religions look at these forces. In Christianity, I have no real knowledge of their theology, but from what I know, in Christian theology, there is a competition between God and Satan. Satan is anti-God. Satan is fighting God. And Satan is a threat to God. In Judaism, that's totally off. That's totally off. It goes totally against monotheism. The moment you say that there's any force in nature other than God, you just created an idol. That means there are two gods. So you know how Judaism understands Satan? Satan works for God. Satan wants that there should be a balance of power within the natural universe. So there are forces of goodness, there are forces of negativity. They don't have any control. They only do what God tells them to do. These are not beings with their own volition and control. So you don't have to be scared of them. We don't worship them. In Jewish prayer, we don't pray to angels. They're the ones carrying our prayers. But these are not autonomous beings. These are not independent beings. They have no independence, none of their own strength. And this is another thing that we see in the word of angels. Another Hebrew word for angels. So one word is what we've been using until now, which is the more common term, is malach, malachim, right? But there's another term for angels. Anyone know? This is a tough one. The other term for angels is chayot. In the daily prayer, we speak about it. Chayot HaKodesh, holy chayot. What does the word chayot mean in Hebrew? You know? Animals. You go to the zoo, you're seeing a bunch of chayot. What is a Jewish saying? What What do you call a little kid when they're a troublemaker? Wilde Chaya, you're a wild animal. So we refer to angels as Chayot, a bunch of animals. Why do we call them animals? Such nice fuzzy things with wings. Why do you call them animals? They are the spiritual animals. What are animals? Totally instinctive, hardwired to be one track, very predictable. Animals are doing one thing only. That's angels. So they're not a force to reckon with in Judaism. It's a very important thing. There's only one force that we reckon with. There's only one real force in creation, and that's God. And all of these angels and demons we're learning about are not things that we have to be concerned about. They're simply the agents and emissaries of God, and they don't have any of their own power to make decisions or to take bribery or to take tips and give us better fate. None of that exists. That's the most important thing. So let's put that up over here. Number one, angels are called chayot. Just like animals, angels have no free choice. And therefore, this is going to be our last point. Angels and demons have no independent power. We should not engage with them. We shouldn't even mentally or in practice engage with angels or demons. It's simply so would somebody say, should I maybe not travel to a desert because demons are hanging out in the desert? Judaism says, stop making yourself meshuggah. These are not forces you have to worry about. God's in control. Okay, and with that, dear friends, let us get moving. We are running out of time for our next beautiful topic. Let us now speak about ghosts and spirits. And these sound like very funny words, but it's basically the idea of human life after death. What's a ghost? A human that people claim that after the person died, they make an appearance, or they're still haunting their home. Or you could speak with them. You could conjure up a spirit, speak with that spirit. Today, the mediums and psychics, they're making a killing. You know how much money they're making today? Unbelievable what's going on. The industry is only getting bigger. People go to mediums and seance, whatever it's called, right? Seance. So let's learn about the Jewish position on this. Of souls which are disembodied, souls that leave the body, what is their presence in our physical universe and what is our connection with them? So I'll tell you, and many of you were there, we did a course, it was over COVID, called Journey of the Soul. It was a very, very special course. And we did the whole afterlife, we did it in depth, the whole afterlife topic. And it was a very special course. I got a lot of requests to do a redo. So I think we're going to do a redo maybe one of these months of Journey of the Soul. Such a special course. But so we spoke a lot about everything about the journey of the soul in that course, but there are a few topics that I want to hone in right now, which we actually did not discuss then, which is the process of the afterlife. And specifically, the afterlife vis-a-vis our experience here on earth. Ghosts and communication with the dead. Sounds good? That's the agenda. So number one, to explore the world of souls, we have to go back to the beginning. Let's go back to the way the very first human was created. And that will teach us a lot about the whole experience and the existence of souls. Let us go back, text 14, the very beginning of the Torah. The first human is created on the sixth day of creation, married. And want to read text 14, page 132.
God formed the human of soil from the earth and breathed into his nostrils a neshama, soul, of life. And the human being became a living being.
Okay, very simple. That's how the human being was created. Now, it's very interesting. If you look in the Torah, the entire universe was created in the first 6 days of creation, right? Everything was created in a one-step process. Let there be light, and there was light. Let there be water, and there was water. Let there be dry land, and there was dry land. Everything is one step. God does one thing or says one thing, and that's it. We have the result. Humanity is the only thing thing in creation that was created with a two-step process. First, God forms the body from the earth, but you have a dead body. And then God breathes a soul of life into this person. Two separate parts. And this teaches something very important. Marion, let's read this. You read this next text, text 15.
God did what he had not done with any other creature. With his Holy Spirit, he blew into Adam a neshama that is immortal and does not perish when the body does.
It's the most important idea over here. This idea that the life force of the human is really separate and independent from the physical body is the very source. It's the seed of the idea of the afterlife. Even when the body, just like all physical things, everything physical is degradable, everything organic is going to start falling apart at a certain time. Everything man-made, like plastic, could have a long life. But anything natural is eventually gonna get old and die. That's the way life works. So even when the body dies, the soul that God blew into you doesn't die. And this is the source of the afterlife. Judaism believes in the afterlife. Or, I'll put it this way. But just by the way, some people don't like hearing this, but I'll tell it to you honestly. In my class, I like being very honest. Dogs don't have an afterlife. It's painful when we lose a dog. It's very sad. Do you say Kaddish for a dog? You know what the answer is? No. There's nothing to say Kaddish for. It's gone. We don't say Kaddish for dead things. We say Kaddish for living things. We don't light yahrzeit candles for dead things. We light yahrzeit candles for living things. A dog is dead. Done. Poof. It's gone. Right, like somebody once told me that they don't ever go visit the cemetery. You know why? I saw the dead body. It was gone. Dead. There's nothing there. What am I going? Going to a grave? Is that what you know? Judaism says no. The body died. Or the body is gone. The soul simply disconnected. And the life of that soul continues. So, here's the irony, if you want to put it a little bit differently, okay? If somebody asks you, does Judaism believe in the afterlife? What's the answer?
Yes.
Yes. The answer really is no. Because what does afterlife imply?
After.
That life ended and now there's an after. Something happens after also. Judaism says no, life never ended. Its life is continuing. The only thing that now happens is there's a disengagement. That soul now leaves the body. So the body lost its life, but the life is not over. Understand? So life, that's the number one thing we have to do. Then the question, of course, what happens after death? Where do souls go? Somewhere what we have to know is, according to Judaism, souls don't stick around. Souls leave. There's a process, I'll talk about that soon. There's a process of disengagement. There's a process of souls transitioning from our physical plane of reality to a spiritual reality. But souls don't hang around here. So the whole idea of like there being ghosts and souls lurking around in cemeteries and hanging around, that's not really the way it works. Souls move on to a different plane of reality. They don't go nowhere. There's a space for them, or some people call heaven. And these are not phenomena that are perceivable to our human eye. So the conventional understanding of like a ghost, that the person is still hanging around in their house and their spirit is still here, that's not the way Judaism sees it. So the soul doesn't die. We're not saying the soul is gone and poof, disappeared, and it's like total finality to that life. Life continues, but not in an observable and not within our physical universe. Take a look at page 134. I want to go through quickly with you a few of the things that happen in the process of the afterlife. So number one, the destination of the soul in the afterlife is, of course, where? That's number one. Gan Eden, paradise, the world to come. Souls then, this is the natural habitat of the soul. Souls return to their native homeland. Our souls are all aliens. We are the ETs. We are the invaders of planet Earth. The Jewish soul is an invader. It's not part of the fabric of the physical universe. Everything is part of the physical universe besides our souls. Very interesting thing. The natural habitat of our souls is a spiritual place called paradise, heaven, the world to come. Okay. What's the other destination? Heaven or? Where else do people go? Hell, right? Heaven or hell? You know, they say that in heaven, the joke goes that somebody once went to heaven and there were two lines. In the men's line, there were two lines. One was a line. There's a big sign that said, any man who was just obedient to his wife and his wife ran him should go in this line. And whichever man was independent from his wife should go to this line. All the men are in the line that they were obedient and under the yoke of their wives. One little Jew was on the line where he says he was independent. Somebody went over to him and said, what are you doing here in this line? He says, I don't know, my wife told me to stand here. Okay, it's a joke, there's no such things in heaven. Okay, so what's hell all about? This is another concept where, the Christian idea very much distorted the Jewish understanding, because we are the inventors of hell, by the way. But their version became pop culture. So here's the idea. What happens in hell? Hell is not a destination. It's not going to heaven or hell. Every soul goes to heaven. Some souls, perhaps many souls, perhaps most souls, are not ready to go to heaven straight away. They need to first go to hell, or what we call Gehenna, for a brief period of time. But it's never a permanent destination. So every soul goes to heaven. Sometimes the way to heaven is through hell. So what's happening in hell? Hell is not where God gets to punish you and burn you and roast you and pitchfork you. None of that stuff. It's not the place of divine retribution. Hell is simply soul rehab, soul catharsis. What happens is a soul lives here on earth and does, not always is it doing the best things. And sometimes it gets dusty and rusty and it just gets weighed down with baggage of anything negative that happened in its life. And it needs to cleanse itself from those experiences. So hell is the car wash. And whatever is necessary to clean and polish this soul, to bring it back to its shiny, pristine condition, that's what happens in hell. And as soon as the soul is ready, it leaves hell and goes to heaven. So it's really a very healthy and important thing for the souls to go through. Because if the soul doesn't go to hell, then it's stuck with all of its negativity and baggage for all of eternity. So the whole concept of eternal damnation, not Jewish. Hell is a privilege. It's a beautiful thing. You go to hell as a step forward, as a way of rehabilitation, as a way of removing yourselves from past negativity. It's like that. The soul's future life could be without any negative baggage that it's just carrying around with it forever. So, yeah, go ahead.
Is there such a thing as a lost cause that they'd be sentenced to hell forever?
No. Souls don't go to hell forever. If you actually look over here at the very bottom text of page 134, the Mishnah teaches us in Adiot the maximum sentence of the wicked in Gehenna is 12 months. You know what that means? Which means that wicked people, the worst Jews, go to Gehenna for 12 months. Most people go to Gehenna for a few days, a few weeks, a few months. It's unthinkable that a regular average person is going there for even 11 months. 11 months in hell, that's crazy. So most people, it's a few weeks, and they're... But this is a time, now I do want to say, it's not comfortable for the soul. It's not easy for the souls to go through hell, even though the souls know that it's very healthy. But it's difficult. It's a very challenging time for the soul, which is why that first few months after the passing of a loved one, we make sure to do extra mitzvahs in their honor. We want to surround them with comfort. And there's even a Jewish tradition not to visit the grave in the first few months. Because this is a time of transition for the soul. It's a time the soul has still not come to its final destination at peace. So it's a difficult time the first few months because of hell. But hell is not divine retribution. It's not God being able to pay you back for all the times you didn't listen to Him. It's a very healthy part of the process. how souls get admitted into paradise. Okay, but now let's go through the next few things. Then there's something called reincarnation, which is very interesting. Reincarnation means, we did a whole class about this. Every single soul has a mission. Very often, it is impossible for a soul to do their entire mission in one lifetime. So what happens is, literally, one soul, when it goes above, will break off and create a new soul. Like create new cells, new stem cells. They'll take a stem cell from that soul. I don't know what just happened here. Are they closing the lights on us here at the Jewish Federation? Okay. These lights went out. What was that? Or it's DTE making problems. Okay. All right. That could happen. A soul that still has more work to do will spurn out of it a new soul, and that is called reincarnation. So it's like one soul giving birth to a new soul above, and that new soul continues the mission of a previous lifetime that it needs to complete. That's called reincarnation. But this is not perceivable. We have no clue if we are reincarnations. We don't even know what our mission is. These are things that are beyond the perceivable life of us humans. There's something called Ibur, which is called soul impregnation. Ibur has two functions. Ibur is where there's a soul that needs a mitzvah. Let's say for it to go into heaven, it needs to do one mitzvah. But it only needs one little mitzvah. It doesn't need to come down for a whole new life. So what happens is that soul will sometimes latch onto another living soul on earth and join along for the ride. And when the soul, the host soul, does the mitzvah, it also shares the mitzvah with the impregnated soul. And then that soul is able to disengage and is able to have that mitzvah. Or sometimes somebody down here on earth can use a spiritual boost. So another soul latches onto your soul and gives extra energy, which is the idea of like a spiritual reawakening, where we wake up one day and we feel we have new spiritual opportunities, we have new spiritual resources, new excitement, new meaning. Sometimes because of Ibur. But again, these are things we can't measure. There's no way to see it. We're not looking at souls. All these things are happening under the surface, outside of our perception. And then in very rare cases, there's something called non-human reincarnation, which is where if there's a soul that has failed so badly multiple times in its mission here on earth, there is rarely something called a soul will be reincarnated into non-human objects, such as an animal or even the inanimate, like a stone. But these are just a bunch of different, you could read more about these. Let's get back to the idea of ghosts. There's one more thing of where, paranormal activity, which maybe I do want to focus on a drop more, especially because in pop culture, it did get a certain disproportionate amount of attention. The basic idea is none of these things that we just discussed, I want to reiterate again, are happening on a level of the perceived physical reality. Most of these things are happening. Souls leave planet Earth. They go to a spiritual plane, a spiritual reality. And there's the whole idea of seeing ghosts is not really Jewish belief. That souls are lurking around and they stay on planet Earth, that's not Jewish. There is one little exception of a soul staying on Earth. And even when it died, when it disembodied, that soul is still lurking around. And this is a concept called, tell me if you ever heard about it, called Dibuk. Heard of Dibuk? I don't know why, but sometimes in the early 1900s, some Jews decided that Dibuk is something worth giving a lot of attention to, and they made plays about it, and movies and books. I remember as a teenager, I read a book about, it was all fiction, it was all Narishkeit, but a book about Dibuk, all made up stories, and it's like pretty freaky stuff. The theory of Dibuk is that there's a soul that is like lost. A soul that is just hanging around, it lost its body, it died, it can't go to heaven, and it hijacks a body. It enters into a body and then hijacks the body, and then that person loses somewhat control. Their soul, their actual soul loses control, and this new soul literally becomes like a parasite and starts hijacking them. So, Is it Jewish? The answer is yes, but it's an extreme rarity. This is not normal. This is not a real. This is like a footnote of a footnote. This is an endnote. That rarely, sometimes this will happen. And there is a record of it, but barely record. This is not a very big part of the afterlife experience, although I promised you we're going to do some paranormal exploration, and I think this makes the cut. So let's read this text from Rabbi Chaim Vital, the great Kabbalist. And he speaks about this idea of the Dibbuk. Max, we're going to read text 16, page 136.
Occasionally, the soul of a wicked person is unable to even enter Gehinnom due to its many transgressions and will wander through the worlds and enter the body of a man or woman. This spirit possesses the person and causes violent seizures. To cure the possessed person, I take hold of their arm and feel their pulse. While holding the arm, I recite a specific verse in various forms and meditate on the divine names, the different arrangements of the letters form. While doing so, I concentrate mentally on removing the spirit from the person. The spirit then talks from within the body and will respond to any questions asked of it. I then order it to leave the body. Sometimes it is necessary to blow the shofar near the affected person's ear.
All right, so there's an interesting thing. If somebody actually has a Dibbuk, you need to go to a Kabbalist, a tzaddik who knows how to do say the right spiritual holy formulas to help release the soul. So this is a tormented soul that wasn't even allowed to enter into Gehenna. Can you imagine? You can't even go to hell. Going to hell is a privilege. Going to hell is a great thing. You're admitted to hell. That means you're on the road to recovery. Sometimes they'll say, I'm sorry, even hell won't do it for you. So these souls are stuck in between two worlds. They can't be in a physical world, but they weren't even admitted entry into the spiritual worlds. That's a Dibbuk. But again, this is something which in Judaism it says this is very rare for it to happen. But also, any Jewish sources that speak about the concept of Dibbuk give a big warning. They say if there's anybody who seems to be displaying symptoms of a Dibbuk, don't bring them to the rabbi right away. You know where you bring them first? To a doctor.
Where?
To a doctor. Chances are this is psychiatric problems, neurological problems, this is mental health issues. 90% of the time, it's a doctor's problem. If the doctors rule out any mental health, any psychiatric, any neurological problems, okay, then perhaps a Dibbuk. But this is very, very rare. Okay, dear friends, I'm going to give you a little bit of a warning. We're going to go a little bit over time, okay? So if anybody wants to bail out, do it now. What?
What else is new?
This course I was doing pretty good. Please. No? This course I was on time. No?
I know, but your reputation precedes you.
Oh, okay. See, you can never do anything
I
right.
say that with love, by the way.
Love. Okay. You know, I'll keep you here another half hour. Let's go to town with this one.
Don't scare me. This is interesting stuff.
Okay, it's interesting. You can fall asleep if you want. It's okay.
No, I'm sorry.
All right. Let's now talk about the idea of communicating with spirits. Communicating with spirits. You know, the death of a loved one is, of course, painful, traumatic, and who wouldn't give anything in the world? You know, one last communication. What's that one last thing I wish I could have told Dad? I could have told Mom. There was just a Jewish magazine that they asked 30 people an interesting question. If you could have an hour to study Torah with somebody, who would that be? So one guy said, I'd love to learn with Moses. Somebody said, I'd love to learn with Rashi. You know what one person answered? He said, I had a child who died when they were, I think, 4 or 5 years old. I wish I could learn Torah with him for 1 hour. Like, it's meant to be like an entertaining column. Like, you know, who could come up with the most original, creative answer of who? That, yeah, I'll give anything to spend an hour with my son and be able to learn with him. And therefore, throughout history, including today, the desire and the pursuit of what's called a seance session, to go and attempt communication with a lost loved one, has always, that appeal has always been there. So we have the obvious question, is it real? Could people, are there psychics, are there mediums, they could actually get a hold of that soul and communicate with it? So some people are very skeptical, but you would be shocked. And I don't know who's here in this room. I don't know what your beliefs are. I'm not going to ask you. But the belief in these things, or at least the dabbling. I don't know if I believe, but let's try. It's worth a shot. Pay $250 for a session. Who knows? Maybe it's real, maybe it's not real. I'll go to a medium. I'll do a seance session. So is it real, is it not? I don't know. I personally think it is I personally think it's a fraud. If I was in the fraud business, this is personal opinion. I don't know if the Torah, it could be there are legitimate ways of doing it. But I just know that if I was a fraudster, I would be a medium. You know why? It's the best way to take advantage of people. You always want to take advantage of somebody when they're in the most vulnerable situation. This is the most vulnerable. I'm saying people are dying, and the chances of success are also very easy as well because people don't walk in critical. People want to be convinced that this is real. So it's very easy to fraud people. Okay, but in any case, I don't want to go there if it's real, if it's not real. What we do is what the Torah tells us. What does the Torah tell us? Okay, let's read page 137. Text 17a.
Do not turn to the practice of.
Okay, this is one of the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah. A prohibition. Don't turn to Ov. What's Ov? I don't know. So Elki, Maimonides tells us what is Ov. What is this prohibition of the practice of Ov? Text 17b, page 138.
What does the off practice entail? The off practitioner stands and offers an incense offering of specific ingredients. He holds a wand of myrtle in his hand and waves it while whispering a certain incantation in a hushed tone. This continues until the person making the inquiry hears a voice as if another person is speaking to him and replying to his questions. It appears as if the words are coming from below the earth in a very low tone, to the extent that it cannot be perceived by the ear, but only sensed by the mind. Another off method entails taking the skull of a corpse, offering incense to it, and chanting incantations until one hears a voice in a very low tone emanating from his armpits and replying to his questions. These are all forms of off and are types of idol worship. We are warned against these practices in the verse. Do not turn to the practice of off.
Okay. So there's many different ways and practices and practitioners of Ov. And by the way, if you read Maimonides traveled a lot, and he also surveyed a lot of these superstitious activities, and he reports about it. He knows what they were doing in the far west, in Spain. He knows what they were doing in Europe. He knows what they were doing in the Iberian Peninsula. It's very interesting. Maimonides was a man of the world as well, and he reports a lot. He says, I witnessed a lot of these things. Any form of attempting to, whether it's real or whether it's even perceived, even if it's just imaginary. Maimonides, by the way, his opinion was that all this is fake. It's all baloney. It's all people taking advantage of other people. It's all fraud. But any even attempt of dabbling into speaking and conjuring up spirits is absolutely forbidden. Maimonides says it's not just a sin, it's a very severe sin. Why? Because this whole idea of conjuring up dead spirits was associated with idolatry. So this is a prohibition in the idolatry category, which is one of the three cardinal sins that a Jew has to be willing to give up his life for. Most sins, if it's a life and death situation, you're allowed to do it. Besides idolatry, it's one of the three things. Idolatry, adultery, and murder. This is on that level. So for a Jew, whether it's real or not, for a Jew to go and do any dabbling, to meeting with a medium and doing a seance session is absolutely off limits for a Jew. So that's number one, very important thing over there. Okay, but I don't want to leave you on a dud. Is there no communication? That's it. Souls are dead and they're alive, but out of reach of us. No, the answer is no. There is a Jewish version, the way Judaism teaches us, how we maintain a relationship with the dead. And I want to go a little bit more, drop more nuance of what I taught you earlier. Before I told you that souls leave, souls go up to heaven, which is true. But Judaism teaches something which is very powerful and it's a very powerful idea. there's an element of the soul that remains here on earth. The way it works is, when there is death, which is the disengagement of the soul from the body, number one, that doesn't happen immediately. So on the one hand, yes, there is an immediate moment of death when biological life stops. But the soul is still connected with the body at that moment. It happens through decomposition. When the body naturally decomposes, that is when the soul gets released from the body and begins its ascent above. And it takes about a week for that to happen. By the way, decomposition happens very quickly. Once the body goes 6 feet under, the physical decomposition happens rather quickly. Already within a week, most of decomposition happened. And that releases the soul. And that's a very healthy and normal part of the process. But there's one part of the soul that never leaves the body. Souls are unbelievably loyal. It's a sign of holiness. Very loyal. And if this was the body that gave it life, that gave it expression, that gave it the opportunity to do mitzvahs and to study Torah for so many decades, that soul never really leaves the body. And there's one part of the soul that remains in the body. So let me put this up for you. Okay, so number one, we just spoke earlier, communication with spirits. Whether it's real or not, it is strictly forbidden in Judaism. Okay. There's 5 components to the soul. I want to talk about the bottom 2 components. The lowest component of the soul is called nefesh. The next component of the soul is called ruach. The nefesh is the part of the soul that generates physical, biological life. We could smell, we could touch, we have 5 senses, we can move all of our organs. That is the functionality of nefesh. Ruach is the life force that generates our human emotions. And there's another 3 dimensions. Ruach, starting from ruach, is the part of the soul that leaves the body and goes on its spiritual journey above. But the nefesh, the lowest component of the soul, always remains in the grave. Which means, unbelievably, when you go to a cemetery, these are not a bunch of dead bodies. There are souls by every single grave. In Judaism, in the Torah, how do we refer to a cemetery? Anybody know what's the Hebrew term for a cemetery? In Hebrew, it's called Beit HaChayim, the house of the living. Chayim. Doesn't say this is where a bunch of dead bodies are. This is the house of the living. So this is a whole new spin. So on the one hand, yeah, we do have to appreciate that death is souls moving on to a new space, a new dimension. But there's also a truth to the idea that the soul is very much still here. And this is why in Judaism there's a very real value. We go and visit the graves of our loved ones. We are not standing in front of a dead body. We are getting in touch with the soul. Where is the portal to that life that we loved? Where can we find them? Where can we access them? Where can we get in touch again with them? That is at the grave. The grave is not just a burial place for the body. It is where we can access that soul. And dear friends, I want to read this next text with you. It's a bombshell of a text. Unbelievable text. Anna, you want to read? Text 20, page 144 from the Zohar. And just let's read these words carefully. Unbelievable text. Text 20.
The refresh remains present in the grave due to the fact that in remains among the living. It is
Acquainted
with their pain and their time of need. If pleads for mercy of their behalf. When the
inhabitants
in the world are in need, when they are in sorrow and visit the cemetery, the nefesh is aroused to their
plight.
It sent and wakes the rock, which in turn entreats God's for mercy. Consequently, God has mercy on the world.
See what happens over here? Unbelievable. When you're in pain, when you're in need of divine blessings, so go to a grave, go to your loved one, go to somebody special in your life, go to somebody who cares about you, and pray to God there at that location. And even speak to that soul and let them know what's happening. There's a soul there, they still love you, they still care for you, they're listening, and now they feel your pain. And they go and pray as well. And they go straight up to God and say, God, I'm in need of a blessing. And they arouse blessings and mercy upon their loved ones. If there's a nachas, if there's something special happening, go bring that joy to that deceased loved one. They're there, they want you, they appreciate it. So maybe you won't feel it, but that's the form of communication. This is why you should know. Personally, for me, I make sure at least a few times a year to go visit the Rebbe's Ohel. It's not just paying respect to a great man who once lived. This is my Rebbe. When he was alive, we weren't going to his body, we were going to his soul. His soul is still there at the grave. If he cared about every Jew then, he cares about every Jew now. If he gave blessings and cared deeply and prayed for Jews then, he does that now. So you go to the grave. If you need to pray for something, you go there. There's essentially no difference between life and death. The level of communication changes. The love language changes. But it's very interesting. There's a story that's brought down in a not a recent book, in a very classical Jewish text, 900-year-old text. He reports that there was a Jewish community who wanted to relocate. They wanted to leave their area and move to a different area. The night after they made the decision, the rabbi or the leader of that town had a dream from the deceased rabbi who was buried in that cemetery. And the rabbi asked in a dream, this is connecting, right? We're going back to our first lesson about dreams. This soul came to visit and he said, please don't leave. We all very much appreciate when you come to visit us in the cemetery. Please don't leave us alone. And they stayed. You hear what's going on over here? So in Judaism, we have to appreciate this idea. We have a relationship. When our loved ones die, they are not gone, they don't disappear, they are still accessible, and there's a real active, loving, and caring relationship. It's different. And it's painful that we lost the physical connection. But the spiritual, the real connection from one soul to another soul is still very much there. And I want to conclude on this note. The whole idea of going to a medium, why is it inappropriate? So I'll give you so first of all, the Torah says it's wrong, but I'll give you another point. It is not respecting the new phase of life. It's not respecting the new love language. And we all know, especially as parents, love languages change. The way we communicate our love and our affection and our connection with a spouse, with our children, with our parents changes over time. A little baby, how do you give them love? You cuddle with them, you smother them with kisses. That's what you do, and hugs. But your 6-year-old kid, you can't do that anymore. If you'll do that, they'll resent it. What do they need? The love languages changes. Now they need your attention. Now they need quality time spent with them. Get down on the floor, play with them. When they're teenagers, by the way, most parents struggle with this for good reason. The love language changes overnight. What kids appreciate, your teenager resents. So all of a sudden, you're all stuck. What's going on over here? So the parent has to learn the love language just changed. What does my kid need? Does my kid need a lot of support? A lot of verbal support? A lot of affirmation of who they are, their qualities, quality time spent together. When they're married, our married children, it's also different. In the senior years, especially when the physical body is really starting to age, the love language changes. So part of being appropriate is understanding what are the needs and how do we communicate love right now. Going and saying, I need you to talk to me through a medium, and I need to be able to hear you. That's forcing the wrong love language. That's not the language of connection anymore. This is a soul. They left the body. What's meaningful to them? What's important to them in this moment? They still need our love. They loved us and they wanted our love when they were here on earth. They still need that love. So what's the love language?
You better get to your parents.
By the way, that would be a beautiful resolution from tonight's class, to go visit our loved ones. But what's the love language? This is the love language. Let's read text 21. This is the most important elements, the most important gifts that we could be giving to our loved ones. Text 21, page 145. And Linda, give us a read. Text 21.
When children say Kaddish for their father or mother, it is like sending regards. When they learn a chapter of Mishnah on their behalf, it is like sending them a letter. And when they fulfill mitzvot and good deeds for the benefit of the soul, it is like sending them an entire package.
Mitzvahs is the one thing that they cannot do in heaven. Because you need a body to light Shabbos candles. You need a body to put on tefillin. So the one thing that they miss the most is not a good piece of steak. It's not money. It's not going to a park. What they are desperately wanting is a mitzvah. And that we could give them. We could do a mitzvah and say, this is your mitzvah. I'll do it for you. It's as if you're doing it. And that's the love language of, which is why we make sure to say Kaddish. Do mitzvahs in their honor. Study Torah in their honor. Do something we say, this is your mitzvah. And that is the greatest form of communication. Mitzvahs benefit and are deeply appreciated by the soul of the deceased. This is the idea. Okay, dear friends, it's 9:15. We have one last component of today's class, which is not me speaking, is a video. The last topic is extraterrestrial life. In your book, starting on page 146, is a little feature with a bunch of Jewish sources about the possibility of extraterrestrial life, but we have a video that gives a little summary of it. So we'll watch the video, and then we'll close up shop for the night. Whoever wants to stay, unless you got a meeting to go to at 9:15 at night, which is possible, I'm not ruling it out. If you're in a rush, you got to go. I don't want you to meet a lunch meeting. Okay, don't blame it on me if you show up late. You missed the deal. Extraterrestrial life, here we go.
Humans are curious. Gazing into dark skies to inspect its shiny objects has been a fact of life for as long as human life existed. But what about those planets and galaxies? Does any life exist there? Is there anything out there on any planet, anywhere, staring in our direction and dreaming? Jews love questions, and this one was presented on several occasions to Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, known simply as the Rebbe, whose knowledge of both Torah and scientific sources was truly remarkable. The Rebbe insisted that Judaism does not rule out the chance that life may exist elsewhere, and that classic Jewish sources are divided as to whether such life actually exists. But when it comes to the purpose for which God created the cosmos, planet Earth is unique. Only its human inhabitants received a Torah from God, and only they have the capacity for free choice. So, is there life on Mars? Perhaps, but there are certainly no synagogues. In the early 1960s, a leading Jewish scientist, Professor Velvel Green, worked for NASA's Planetary Quarantine Division. He asked for the Rebbe's opinion on his exobiology program that was seeking signs of life on other planets.
I said, there are those, and I used the words, there are those of your followers who say that a Jew should not be working in the space biology program, the exobiology program, because it goes contrary to Torah. The Rebbe stopped, one of those beautiful moments in time. He didn't smile, and he just thought. And then he came back with this, and he said as follows, exactly the way I'm doing now. He pointed at me. And he's saying this in Yiddish. You should look for life on Mars. You should keep looking for life on Mars. And if you don't find it, keep looking elsewhere. And elsewhere. And keep looking. Because to sit here in this world and you say there is no life elsewhere is to put a limit around what God can do. And that nobody can do. Now the Rebbe didn't say there was life on Mars. The Rebbe just said that the job of a scientist who is trained in that profession is to keep looking for it.
But not everyone receives such a response from the Rebbe. In 1978, a similar question was posed by a young Jewish man living in Milan, Italy. He and his friends had been debating the question of extraterrestrial life, and they turned to the Rebbe to inquire about the Torah's perspective. The Rebbe wrote back, but his reply was as distant from his response to Professor Green as the Earth is from Mars. He advised the questioner that although nothing in Judaism negates the possibility of extraterrestrial life, it was not advisable for him to be spending time investigating the question. Instead, he should focus on the terrestrial life surrounding him. I must admit that I answered your question without great enthusiasm. This is like a scenario in which we face a dangerously ill patient or a burning house. And instead of trying to save the patient or extinguish the fire, we deliberate profound theoretical questions about the cosmos. Such inquiries won't do a thing to help the patient or extinguish the fire. Similarly, today's Jewish youth are seeking direction. They are missing the path of Torah and its commandments, which is the path of true life. And this crisis is not happening somewhere in the heavens, amid the planets, nor in a remote corner of the earth, but rather in the immediate vicinity of you and your friends in Milan. And it is a matter of vital importance. God promises us that when we truly exert ourselves in this regard, we will succeed. Two different individuals, two very different responses. So, is there extraterrestrial life? Well, it seems that if you're a professional scientist with your head in space, advance science, discover more of God's wonders. But if you belong to the rest of humanity, seek life on Earth, work tirelessly to enhance it, and create wonders here for others.
All right. And with that, I think it's a great note. With all this good learning about dreams, about the stars and the constellations, and the evil eye and curses and demons and ghosts and angels, we have to always remember it's all good learning. We have to always direct it back down. What's going to be our next move tomorrow? How are we going to grow in our Yiddishkeit through this? How are we going to help our world because of what we learned?
I've got it, oh, I'm sorry.
And I want to challenge all of you. I want to challenge you to spend some time tonight before you go to sleep and try to think about all 4 of the classes and say, what inspired me? What spoke to me? What captured my heart and soul? And to make a little resolution. What could I do because of it? It could be from today to visit a grave. It could be to put up a mezuzah, which we've been learning about. What is something that I could directly take all this study about all this stuff going around and bring it home to where it really matters? And with that, dear friends, I'll get to you in a moment. I want to wish you all a wonderful night. I want to thank you for joining. You've all been wonderful. And I look forward to seeing you all at our summer course, How Happiness Thinks. So may God bless you all. I'll miss you all, so I hope we'll see you soon. Good and happy occasions. By the way, you can take some little snack on your way home. It's very healthy. So no excuses this time. And we will see you all hopefully very soon. And hopefully at our next course. So God bless you all. Have a wonderful night. We'll see you.